There are moments that etched themselves into the fabric of history, shaping the collective consciousness and echoing through generations. The year was 1979, and again in 1983, the island of Grenada stood at the crossroad of destiny, navigating turbulent waters of change and resilience. In those pivotal moments, a beacon of light emerged, a media corporation dedicated to illuminating the pathway forward, to keeping the people informed, connected, and empowered. Today, as we reflect on the echoes of the past, we celebrate the profound impact of this media corporation, a testament to the enduring power of storytelling and the resilience of the human spirit.
Very substantial number of people in our country had decided that the time had come to fight back, that there was no more point in running and ducking.
Welcome to episode 19 of Resilience of the Spice Isle. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. As always, I'm pleased that you have joined us. For over 45 years, the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation in Barbados has been instrumental in showcasing the resilience of the Grenadian people, and each episode of this series stands as a testament to that enduring spirit. In episode 7, we step back into March the 13th, 1979, the day Maurice Bishop overthrew Gairy and ascended to the role of Prime Minister. Joining us for this episode is esteemed journalist and a CBC veteran, Mohammed Saeed, who was among the television crew dispatched to Grenada to capture the unfolding events firsthand in 1979. As we journey back in time, Mohammed Saeed will share his experiences on the ground, recounting the challenges faced and the profound impact of those historic moments which remain preserved in the archives of the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation.
These were smaller premises, and the newsroom was right up front, where anybody coming into the car park, you can see them. Across from us was the general manager's office, separated by the reception. First man in early in the morning, 6 o'clock shift. I'm there. Just one reporter is in there. And that morning, we got a call from our stringer in Grenada, Leslie Sion. He says, I'm calling to let you know a lot of shooting and it seemed to be a revolt here, blah, 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 so on. So, wow. So, being in the newsroom, first thing would be to get hold of your news director, your general manager, because it's not an everyday thing. It's very unusual. 13th morning, When I spoke to the general manager, he said, all right, Saeed, I'm trying to do a couple of things, but in the meantime, you can have your passport ready. I'm trying to get a private flight into Grenada. And, he said he will call back. So I said, all right, give me a little while. I didn't live too far from CBC. Went home, newly married man, tell the wife, I come for my passport. I'm going to Grenada. What happened there? A revolution. She turned around and asked me, you know what a revolution is? I said, well, first man on call and you gotta go, duty calls. So at that time, it was like, what is going to happen? You don't know. You've never been to a situation like that, but you've heard it in other parts of the world, what can happen. Anyhow, got back here. We were joined by one or two other people from other media. Like I think Al Jilts was with us on board that plane. Our cameraman, if I recall correctly, would have been Richard Barnett. Yeah, and we got on board that plane. And as soon as we got on board, I think it was Tropic Air, if I'm not mistaken, the pilot said, I'll be taking you to Grenada, but it's not a normal flight. I will not be waiting for you. So as soon as I land, you have a couple of minutes to get out, if the situation is good. All right, so, you know, obviously we were on board to cover the news. So we went, and when we landed, before we landed, we saw drums on the, you know, the tarmac to prevent flights. But this was a small plane, so it maneuvered around. And here's the plane you could just imagine parked in front of the terminal, and about, let's say, 6 people in the plane looking across. Anything can happen right now. We didn't have permission to land, obviously, so it was a risk to everybody. Huh? We slowly, you know, had the door open, and I think it was the pilot who first got out, although they say he gets out last. So after that, since he goes in and he's taking a little while, we decide we're also going to go. We're itchy to go, you know, ready to cover the news. When we got in, we were read all the wrong things we did and no permissions and why are you all here and so on and so forth. I'll make one point here that everyone on board that aircraft was a practicing journalist, except I believe one person. And that one person, for whatever reason, was on board that plane. And when we landed, it was like, you are journalists from Barbados, everybody from Barbados, and so on. So we were a little hesitant, you know. But what can you do? You know, you're on the fly, and you don't know whether to say, well, one person is not. Anyhow, we didn't say anything. And that person was with us. If I recall, you know, he was a guy called Bayer. Okay? In those days, many people didn't know him, but maybe afterwards, you know, people got to know who he was. We go in and negotiated our presence there, and we want to speak to the leader of the revolution. He's at Radio Free Grenada, Maurice Bishop. All right. So that was our main aim. We've landed here to go. Wait, hold on, they would have checked, obviously. You know, people landing an aircraft here. What's going to happen now? So we then took a risk to get from the airport to Radio Free Grenada. It's quite a distance, you know. Now, the airport today is in a different place. The airport, the old airport was the most difficult place to get from there to, you know, if you were going into the capital. Today is a lot easier. Yeah. And it is only afterwards, when the revolution took root, that that airport was completed and so on. People were outside with taxis, and obviously, you know, in a situation like that, how the prices would go and so on. So we negotiated everything. It's not a normal situation, but the drivers and the guys at the airport said, you know, it might be better for you guys to stay here and wait for further word rather than rushing and going. Well, we said no. If it is okay with you and you allow us to leave here, we'll go. So we went in this, my cameraman and I, and maybe one other person in the car, an old Austin Cambridge or Morris Oxford in those days. These young fellows would not know anything about that. So we go in this car, and we saw that at every police station there was shooting. And on a couple of occasions we had to take cover. You know, we were not right in the middle of it, but as you approach, you never know. So precautions, everybody went down until the shooting went down a little bit. Go again. And it happened at a couple of stations there. So we finally got Bishop's command center, which was the Radio Free Grenada. So, you know, looking at the countryside, you're not a tourist that day, you know, so you're observing every little movement everywhere. And we got there to Radio Free Grenada, and obviously, you know, we were checked over thoroughly. I mean, you're in a military situation. As soon as we made contact with the leader of the revolution, New Jewel Movement was the party that had just come in to replace Eric Gairy, okay? We had known him from the news angle that there's a New Jewel Movement, there's agitation in the country. You would have had pictures of him, you would have had recordings of him at rallies before. So you knew him and you identify him. Yes, this is the guy. And he had the gift of speech, and therefore he was rallying people around him, reassuring them.
Under the days of Hurricane Gary, with an unemployment situation of over 50% of the workforce, and among women, over 70% unemployed, unable to find jobs. And in the case of women, those few who did eventually manage to get a job, many of them, in return for the job, had to sell their bodies before they would get the job. And with the ending once and for all in our country of the sexual exploitation and victimization of our women, we say a real democratic basis for the participation of our women has been laid. There are those who believe that you cannot have a democracy unless there is a situation where every 5 years and for 5 seconds in those 5 years, a people are allowed to put an X next to some candidate's name. And for those 5 seconds in that 5 years, they become Democrats. And for the remainder of the time, 4 years and 364 days, they become once again non-humans, non-people, without any right to say anything to their government, without any right to be involved in running their country.
When we first saw him, he seemed to be in command, but not that busy that he would not pay attention to the little things in the room and welcoming us in a way, and so on. So young, energetic, he himself probably didn't know how it would pan out. And therefore, there would have been a lot of things going through his mind. But I think that he paid attention to his environment. He was good about that. Then, of course, he and the other Caribbean leaders would have had their divisions and problems later on. But at that point in time, we felt that we were witnessing, a grassroots kind of movement. So first thing Bishop said is, you need to feed these people, break the tension. So that was the first time we felt a little comfortable. He's the leader, what he says goes. This would have been coming up to midday. So between 6 o'clock in the morning, getting that call, to about midday, we had done all of these things and got to the station within, I would say, 4 to 6 hours. On the 13th, in the middle of all of that thing, yeah. Actually, it was an excellent move by CBC to get someone in there early. The pictures we got were the only video pictures. There was nobody else in there. And when we came back here and we showed it on CBC, there were people from all over the world calling CBC to get pictures. This is the only thing, and comments and so forth. So it was a good move. And from a news point of view, that was something like taken well in advance, aircraft prepared, your journalists prepared, everything ready to go. Not too much thought about the coming back part of it, but at least to get in there. So Bishop was nice to us in the sense that he agreed to the interview and obviously, would have reiterated what a dangerous situation we had landed ourselves in. And he cannot guarantee safety. This thing is still a work in progress, so to speak. So no clear-cut answers. Anyhow, we did the interview and he gave us the first interview and we asked him the reasons why he had taken this action and why today. He mentioned, injustice and, Gary was out of touch and there was a lot of arrests being made and Gary was said to have had a secret police in those days. So he mentioned all of those things, okay?
We believe that this is truly a victory for the people of Grenada. The broadest masses of our people, workers, farmers, fishermen, agricultural workers indeed, the youths in particular, the women, the middle classes in general, were all involved one way or another in this particular struggle. We see it as being truly a revolutionary upheaval. We say this, that when yesterday we found ourselves forced to take a decision to attack the army barracks this morning, we of course were not sure as to precisely what would happen after that. We found ourselves driven to this course, not only because of the accumulation of daily repression over the past years by the Gary dictatorship, but more particularly because in recent times our people have found two things in particular, just in the last week, that they felt they could not take anymore. One was a very obviously fraudulent, fake, and farcical electoral revision, which they were foisting on the people of Grenada so as to perpetuate further their rule by bullet while pretending the ballot was being used. The second was, Gary yesterday said he was going off to America. Well, he didn't really say, in fact. We managed to find out through our inside contacts. And what we were able to discover in a concrete way from our sources within the army and within the police was that the plan was to time his departure with the mass slaughter of our leadership. And we decided that the time had come when we could not take that.
And it was the anniversary of the New Jewel movement just a few days before. So these people were, ready to go, and Gary was out of the country. From what I know as a journalist, Gary would go to the United Nations and talk of things that was so far above everybody else. Very little about the country. And I think he would have been comfortable thinking, well, he's in leadership position and that this would not change. But there were people on the ground, and the movement was on the ground to take that kind of behavior out as far as Gary is concerned. So they took action on that day, and they started out at dawn, early in the morning. So cover of darkness, they got him to position, and they had gone to the army barracks and tried to secure that, all the police stations, okay, and then went after the ministers of Gary's government, okay. Names earlier up in the revolution was Bernard Cord, I think Derek Knight, George Louison, those are the guys. So we interviewed him, and then we had a story, a confirmation. And he's saying it is irreversible. He does not want anybody to interfere. This is an internal affair. He still had feelings that this is a small country, obviously. Doesn't happen in the Caribbean that often. He is still likely to receive some kind of repercussion. Okay, so he was very concerned about that, and he was out there through us warning people, because this would have been his way of getting the message out. And, we were quite happy with the interview, and afterwards he said, you can move around, but it would be better if, we give you a little escort and so on. And then we asked him if we can do a follow-up interview the day after the revolution with him. He said to come over home by him. We interviewed him and his wife as well, and some other ministers. So the second part of the interview was at his home. The first one was at Radio Free Grenada. So we were allowed then that afternoon to move around, talk to people, and I mean, we would have had clips, if you see the CBC broadcast, of actual people now reacting to it.
It was easy sailing, because even some of the people that were in the police force and some in the army, they got totally fed up, and they were just waiting for the hour to come. But everybody was just afraid of the Mongoose gang. And then that day, when everybody heard that, they were so happy that everybody just dug arms because they were happy. They were very, very happy about this change, because they were suffering too long and you can't say anything.
Because the difference between Gary now and within Free Grenada, as I will say, it was not free. I, for instance, when I got to leave work at the night, I had to think about secret police to beat me up. I got to think about the Green Beast, and also I'm in a dread position of getting home from the dock at night. So now I could walk freely, sleep anywhere if I choose to, and I'm happy.
What struck us at that time was that there were a lot of young people involved, okay? And they seemed to be, you know, kind of disciplined what they would do. So it seemed to have been thought out in a military style way. And we knew right away that Bishop's government would be socialist.
Our definition of socialism, so far as we are concerned, is fully reflected in our manifesto, in our program, in our policy. It is on the basis of the content of that program and policy, on the basis of our social practice over the last 6 years. Our party was 6 years old, by the way, on Sunday gone. And it is in that way we would like to see our definition of what we are looked at.
To the outside world, that was something, you know, unheard of in a peaceful Caribbean island, okay? All right, so we did our stuff there, and then next day we went to his home, interviewed him. He gave more information. We asked him about the formation of the cabinet, who were going to be the figures. Some of them were there. We were able to talk to them quite freely, and so on. And that day ended again with just checking the countryside and so on, right? You know, in all of this, there were very few deaths, 1 or 2, you know, at the beginning, the first 3 days. You know, there wasn't a lot of like mass shooting and killing of people and so on. So that was good, and that meant that we were comfortable, a little more comfortable staying, because it wasn't that kind of hysteria going on. Good. So the thing that shortened our visit there, we had planned to stay there and send our reports and stuff like that, is that, let's go back to the beginning, journalists on a plane except one, okay. By some magical thing, news got to us that, look, your cover is broken, okay? You're in a state over there which is, you know, up and down. And either somebody from Barbados had informed Bishop, or somehow they knew. But they never told us anything, you know. They took us very well, and I don't know at what stage they knew, but we were in the island. But panic hit home in Barbados. We've got Bajans down there. We've got a situation here where maybe one person should not have been in the mix. And that is a risky situation. So we got a message that at sunset, the Coast Guard vessel will come for you. I don't know if it was the George Ferguson or what. But these are the signals, you know, and so on. And you need to get to the waterfront by such and such a time, just after dark. And these were the signals that these are the right people sent for you, and you need to get on board. So all of us, we discussed, you know, from other broadcast media as well as CBC people. And we obviously, that was not a CBC command now. That was a national thing, a little higher up, that you have to be on board. You got to get home, okay? So we then had to obviously cut short our visit. We didn't mind staying on a little longer and getting more footage and so on and so forth. So we, so said, so done, boarded the vessel. And the vessel left after sunset. We landed in St. Vincent, I think, around midnight. Went out and had a good meal, right? Relaxed a bit, and then headed out to Barbados. Obviously, that little boat was flying out of the water. And some people can take a meal and they're flying out of the water. So you know what would happen. Some people were sick. And the boat was just flying out of the water. So we had to hold on to the railing. We couldn't go down below because you're turning from one side to the other. So it was a kind of a rough ride. I guess the seas were rough that day. And we finally got to Barbados around 8 o'clock in the morning. And when you look at your hand, there's all the salt water and everything, you know, because you're bearing all of that weather. So we arrived here, and it was good to be back here. You know, after a good cleanup and so on, we got in the studios here. We had a lot of footage that had to be, you know, developed and put together, and we were on from that day. You know, with very little sleep the next day, and continued that for a few days. And then it became clear that this is the reaction of the Caribbean countries towards it. I think Guyana was the first one to reach out to Grenada, and it was more or less settled that the revolution had taken root. At that time, in the very beginning, there seemed to be a unity between himself and Cord, who were the two big figures in this, and the other ministers. There was this excitement, all hands to the wheel kind of thing. And that probably was something that might have hidden other things that could have been happening. But we would not have observed that unless we were there for a while and, you know, took the ministers individually and spoken to other people. But at that point in time, yes, there was camaraderie and unity among them.
The vision, foresight, and fortitude of the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation in embracing its role as the true voice of the Caribbean, serving as the ears and eyes of our people during that turbulent period in Grenada, is truly commendable. Reflecting on the incident and placing it in perspective 45 years later, we celebrate and commend the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation for its invaluable contribution.
You know, I felt that it was the right move. It is broadcasting to Barbados and the wider Caribbean audience, and it became even a wider audience, which was worldwide. What we had done, what CBC had done, is then shared the visuals. You know, it means a lot to see the visuals. So I think that was a good move. Maybe it could have been, on hindsight, done better if you know, there were not some other sources playing a part in this. But you know, life is what it is. Take it as what it is, and that's what happened. And I think in other areas, CBC would have played, being the only TV station on the island. Or one point to mention is there was a Rastafarian movement here in Barbados. And we got some really good visuals. You know, they were out in Foster's Funland. Ras Moses was the head of the thing. And we went out through the field in this. You still have that Toyota Land Cruiser? We went into Toyota Land Cruiser, the right thing to drive across the Styrian, and went there. So that was one of the things that we were able to cover, and a unique story. Malone Commission of Inquiries, where every day Barbadians were glued to TV to know what happened at the commission and other things. Also, CBC was given the opportunity to study the separatist question in Canada, Quebec. And journalists went from here, I think, you know, as well as other Caribbean journalists, and we were part of that too. So we were able to witness that and see that as well. So there are a couple of things, you know, that stand out in my mind. Obviously, the role would have been larger, and other journalists would have encountered other situations. You take the good with the bad. And in no situation are you going to get all good. And, you know, deal with it as it comes about.
On December the 15th, 2024, the television division of the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation will celebrate 60 years of broadcasting to this region. The pivotal role that CBC has played in celebrating the resilience of the Grenadian people now holds a prominent place in the broadcast landscape of this region. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. This has been Resilience of the Spice Isle. The series continues next week at the same time.